Welcome back to Zarila HOE Stories. Drop your country or city name in comments. Chapter 1: The Spark of Tension. It was a normal Tuesday afternoon when Sarah Collins heard the knock at her door. Her garden, with its carefully pruned rose bushes and overgrown ivy, had always been her escape from the chaos of the world. It was peaceful here on Oakwood Drive, a quiet cul-de-sac where everyone had lived for years without much drama. That is, until now. Sarah opened the door, surprised to see a small envelope with the HOA's logo printed on it. She knew what it meant the moment she saw the seal. "Mrs. Collins?" a voice called from the end of her driveway. It was Tom Jennings, the HOA president, standing in his crisp white shirt and khaki pants, holding a clipboard. She took the envelope, not looking up. "What's this?" she asked, trying to keep the frustration out of her voice. Tom's face twisted into the familiar, smug expression. "It's a notice about your fence. It's been brought to our attention that it's taller than what the rules allow. You'll need to lower it immediately or face fines." Sarah's heart sank. She had put that fence up nearly 5 years ago, with no problems from anyone. It was sturdy, solid, and had given her the privacy she cherished. She had never once received a complaint. "Fines? For what?" Sarah asked, her voice rising. "I've lived here for 10 years without a single complaint. You're telling me this fence is suddenly a problem?" Tom adjusted his glasses, his tone cold. "It's not personal, Sarah. It's about the community rules. The fence needs to be lowered. It's in the bylaws. You know that." Sarah clenched the paper tightly in her hand. "I've read the rules, Tom. There's nothing in there about the height of the fence." He paused, eyes narrowing. "There is now. This complaint has come from several neighbors. Janet and Carl Simmons specifically mention how it's blocking their view. And, as president, it's my job to make sure the rules are followed." "Janet and Carl," Sarah muttered under her breath. The couple next door had always been friendly on the surface, but Sarah had always sensed something more beneath their smiles. Janet's polite greetings had never felt genuine, and Carl often gave her strange looks as he trimmed his lawn. Tom continued, "You'll need to comply by next week. If not, the fines will start piling up." "Fine," Sarah said, her words sharp as she slammed the door shut in his face. She didn't need to hear any more of his condescending speech. She stood still, the weight of the letter in her hands pressing down on her. She knew what Tom was like, a stickler for rules, always acting like he was in charge of the entire neighborhood. But what really struck Sarah was that Janet and Carl had gone behind her back. She had been nothing but polite to them. And now, they were the ones causing trouble. She paced around her living room, the feeling of betrayal gnawing at her. The fence had been there for years, and no one had complained about it until now. The Simmons complaint felt like a personal attack. Janet, the sweet neighbor, and Carl, the silent accomplice, had been waiting for a moment to strike. But Sarah wasn't someone who took things lying down. She had dealt with difficult people before, and this would be no different. She wasn't about to let the HOA, or anyone else, push her around in her own home. As Sarah walked to her kitchen to get a glass of water, her mind raced with thoughts of what she could do. Lower the fence? Tear it down? No, that would be giving in. She didn't want to be another victim of petty complaints. She wanted to show them all she wasn't afraid to stand her ground. That night, Sarah lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The letter from the HOA still sat on her kitchen counter, a constant reminder of the battle brewing. She was tired of being the quiet neighbor who kept to herself. She needed to make a statement. Her eyes drifted over to the window, where she could just make out the outline of her fence against the dark sky. It was sturdy, built to last, and it gave her the privacy she craved. She could hear the sound of Janet's laughter drifting from next door, probably a quiet dinner with Carl. The sound only fueled Sarah's anger. What if she made the fence taller? What if she took it a step further, so high that no one could ever complain about it again? It wasn't just about blocking their view, it was about reclaiming her space. Showing them all that she could do whatever she wanted with her property. Her heart raced as the idea took root. The more she thought about it, the more it made sense. A bigger fence would not only give her the privacy she wanted, but it would also make a statement to the HOA, to Janet and Carl, and to everyone who thought they could walk over her. By the time Sarah drifted to sleep, a plan had formed in her mind. She wouldn't just tear down her fence. She would build it higher. And she would do it right on the property line. But the next morning, when she stepped outside and looked at her fence again, she felt a shiver down her spine. This wasn't going to be a simple decision. It was going to turn into something much bigger. The HOA wouldn't just let her build a taller fence without a fight. And Tom, he wasn't going to take kindly to her defiance. Her phone buzzed with a text from Carl Simmons. "Hey Sarah. I hope you're not planning anything drastic with that fence. You really should just follow the HOA rules." Sarah stared at the message, her hands trembling. This wasn't just a complaint anymore. It was war. And she was ready. Chapter 2: A Bold Decision. The next morning, Sarah woke up with the letter from the HOA still sitting on her kitchen counter. The words were burned into her mind. "Lower your fence, or face fines." It seemed so petty, but the more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Who were they to tell her what she could do on her own property? She had always tried to be a good neighbor. She kept to herself, respected the rules, and minded her own business. But now, it felt like everything was shifting. Janet and Carl, the neighbors she had smiled at and waved to every morning, had gone behind her back and caused trouble. And Tom was just a puppet in all this, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Her thoughts spiraled as she sat at her kitchen table, sipping coffee. Lower the fence? No. That would feel like giving in, like admitting she was wrong when she wasn't. A new idea began to form in her mind, as clear as day. What if she didn't lower the fence? What if she made it taller than any of the others in the neighborhood, taller than Tom or Janet or anyone could ever complain about again? Her hand gripped the edge of the table as the idea took root. Yes. She could build the tallest fence Oakwood Drive had ever seen. It would block anyone's view, give her complete privacy, and send a message to the HOA, "No one tells me what to do with my property." She wasn't just fighting for her fence anymore. She was fighting for her right to choose. To be left alone. To protect her space. Sarah picked up her phone and texted the contractor she had used when she first built the fence. "Can you come by today? I need to make some changes." The contractor responded quickly. "Sure, I'll be there in an hour." By the time the contractor arrived, Sarah had already measured the length of her fence and mapped out exactly what she wanted. The idea was bold. The fence wouldn't just be a few feet taller. She wanted it to tower over everything, tall enough that no one could ever complain about a view again. She'd make it a fortress, her personal sanctuary. "Hey Sarah," the contractor said, holding up his clipboard. "What's the plan? You need repairs or something?" Sarah met his gaze. "No. I want the fence to be taller. Much taller. I need you to add a good 5 feet to it, and I want it done as soon as possible." The contractor's eyebrows shot up. "You sure about this? That's a big change." "I'm sure," Sarah replied, her voice steady but firm. "I want it done, and I want it done now." He looked at her, sizing up the situation, then nodded. "All right, I can get started today. But you know the HOA's not gonna like it, right?" Sarah smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Let them come. I'm not afraid of a little noise." As the contractor worked, Sarah paced around the yard, watching him add beam after beam to the structure. The fence was slowly beginning to grow higher, its new height taking shape with each passing hour. It felt like something was shifting within her. This wasn't just about the fence anymore. This was about standing up for herself. She glanced over at Janet and Carl's house. The blinds in their windows were pulled down, but Sarah knew they were watching, just like they always did. Janet's perfect little world was about to be shattered. By the end of the day, the fence was almost complete. Sarah stood on the edge of her property, looking at it from the street. It was tall. Towering. The wood was solid, the beams reinforced. No one would ever complain about it again. No one would ever tell her what she could and couldn't do with her property. She felt a rush of adrenaline. But then, just as she was about to go inside, she saw him, Tom, the HOA president, standing at the end of her driveway, hands on his hips, staring at her new creation. She sighed, rolling her eyes. "Here we go." "Sarah!" Tom called, his voice loud enough to echo down the street. "What the hell is this? You can't just build a fence like this without approval." Sarah crossed her arms and leaned against the front door. "I don't need your approval, Tom. It's my property." "That doesn't matter," he snapped, taking a few steps closer. "You've broken the HOA rules, and this is going to cost you. You can't just change the height of your fence like this without permission. I'm giving you one chance to take it down before we escalate this." Sarah stood up straighter, her eyes cold. "No. I'm not taking it down. This is my home, Tom, and I'll do whatever I want with it." His face reddened. "You're asking for trouble. I'll have the HOA fine you, and you could be facing legal action." "Let them try," Sarah said, her voice unwavering. "I'm not backing down." Tom's lips pressed into a thin line as he turned and stormed off. "You'll regret this, Sarah," he muttered under his breath. As Sarah watched him walk away, a strange sense of calm washed over her. She had made her decision. The fence was up, and there was no turning back now. She couldn't wait to see what would happen next. But as the day turned to night, Sarah began to realize something. The HOA wouldn't just let her get away with this. They would fight back, harder than before. And she wasn't prepared for the full force of what they could do. The next morning, Sarah woke to the sound of her phone buzzing. It was a message from the contractor. "The HOA is already threatening legal action, Sarah. They're not happy about your fence. You might want to get a lawyer." Her stomach dropped. This was only just beginning. Chapter 3: The HOA Strikes Back. The day after Sarah finished her towering fence, the neighborhood felt different. Her house, once just another home on Oakwood Drive, now stood out as a monument of defiance. The wooden structure loomed over her yard, taller than any of the other fences, blocking the view of every house around it. But it wasn't just the fence that stood out, it was the statement it made. The evening air was thick with tension as Sarah sat in her living room, scrolling through her phone. She knew it was only a matter of time before Tom would show up, but she didn't care. She had made her decision. The fence was staying up, and she was prepared for whatever came next. A sharp knock at the door broke her concentration. She stood up, heart pounding in her chest. It was Tom. Sarah opened the door without hesitation. Tom was standing there, his face red with anger, his posture rigid. He didn't even say hello before launching into a tirade. "Sarah," he spat, "you've gone too far this time. You can't just put up a fence like this without approval. You've violated HOA codes, and you'll be hearing from us soon." Sarah didn't flinch. "I don't need your approval, Tom. It's my property, and I'll do what I want with it." Tom stepped closer, his voice rising. "You think this is over? You think you can just ignore the rules and get away with it? We have the power to fine you, to take you to court, whatever it takes to make you comply. And believe me, I will do everything in my power to make you pay for this." Sarah's heart beat faster, but she remained calm. "I'm not afraid of your threats. The fence stays up, Tom. You're not going to intimidate me." For a moment, Tom was silent, glaring at her. The anger in his eyes was sharp enough to cut through the air, but Sarah didn't back down. She had made her stand. "I'll give you one more chance," Tom said, his voice low and dangerous. "Take it down now, and we'll call this a mistake. But if not, I'll make sure the HOA gets involved, and this will escalate quickly." "I'm not taking it down," Sarah replied firmly. "You can do whatever you want, but the fence is staying." Tom's eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this," he hissed, before turning and storming off. Sarah closed the door behind him, a wave of relief washing over her. She had stood her ground. But as she leaned against the door, A nagging feeling crept into her mind. The HOA wasn't going to let her get away with this. They would retaliate, and it wasn't going to be pretty. The next few days were quiet. Sarah went about her routine, making coffee, tending to her garden, and keeping an eye on her towering fence. Neighbors passed by, casting curious glances, but no one said a word. It felt like the calm before a storm. Then, late one afternoon, Sarah received an email from the HOA. The subject line was simple. Final warning, legal action imminent. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened the message. Dear Mrs. Collins, as previously stated, the fence on your property is in clear violation of HOA regulations. Despite our warnings, you have chosen to ignore the rules, and as a result, the HOA will be proceeding with legal action. We will be filing a formal complaint and seeking an injunction to have the fence removed. We strongly advise you to reconsider your actions and comply with the rules before this matter escalates any further. If you do not act within the next 48 hours, we will proceed with the necessary legal steps. Sincerely, Tom Jennings, HOA President. Sarah sat back in her chair, staring at the email. Her mind raced. She had known this was coming, but seeing it in black and white made it all too real. The HOA wasn't just making empty threats, they were serious. She felt a knot form in her stomach. What now? Her phone buzzed with a text from Carl Simmons, the neighbor who had never said anything to her face, but had clearly been involved in this whole mess. Sarah, you really should think about this. It's not too late to take down the fence. It's causing a lot of problems. She clenched her phone in her hand, anger rising again. Problems? Sarah thought. The only problem is them trying to control everything around here. Not anymore. But the reality of what she was up against sank in. Tom and the HOA weren't just going to back down, and they had the power to make things difficult for her. The threat of legal action hung over her like a dark cloud. She paced the living room, running her fingers through her hair. What if they really do take her to court? What if the fines are huge? And yet, as scared as she felt, a small part of her remained defiant. She wasn't going to let them push her around. She had worked hard to get where she was, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that away from her. The next morning, Sarah received a knock on her door. This time, it was a different face, an attorney from the HOA, here to officially serve her with papers. Mrs. Collins? The man said, holding up a thick stack of papers. I'm here to inform you that the HOA is moving forward with legal action regarding your fence. You're being sued for violation of neighborhood codes. The papers felt heavy in Sarah's hands as she took them. She didn't know what to say. The weight of what was happening crashed down on her. Is this really necessary? She asked, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. I've tried to work with you all. I'm not breaking any laws. This is my property. The lawyer didn't flinch. This is the HOA's decision. You've had your chances to comply. As he turned and walked away, Sarah's mind raced. She wasn't going to back down. But she also wasn't going to let this destroy her. There had to be a way out. There had to be a way to fight back. She stood on her porch, staring at the stack of legal papers in her hands. She was about to enter a war she hadn't prepared for. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. And as the sun set behind her towering fence, Sarah knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. Chapter 4: The Battle Escalates. The day after receiving the legal papers from the HOA, Sarah couldn't shake the tension. The stack of papers sat on her kitchen counter, a stark reminder that things were no longer simple. She had hoped the HOA would back off after her bold decision, but now she was being dragged into a legal battle. Everything felt like it was spiraling out of control. The phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. She stared at the screen for a moment. It was her lawyer. Sarah had hired him the day after she received the legal papers, knowing she would need help. She hesitated for only a moment before answering. Hello, Sarah, the lawyer said, his voice calm but serious. I've reviewed the papers the HOA served you. This is no small matter. They're serious about taking you to court. Sarah's stomach twisted. I know, she replied. I don't know what to do now. This is my property. I've followed all the rules. I shouldn't be in this situation. I understand, but the HOA isn't going to back down easily, he said. The first step is to prepare for a court hearing. We need to gather evidence, review the HOA's claims, and see if they have any valid ground to stand on. Sarah leaned against the counter, staring at the papers again. Is there any way to avoid this? Can't we settle this without going to court? The lawyer's voice softened. I'll try my best to negotiate, but you need to be ready. The HOA is not going to let you get away with this. You've broken their rules, and they're going to make you pay for it. Great, Sarah muttered under her breath. Just great. She hung up the phone and sat in silence for a while. Everything felt heavy. She couldn't believe it had come to this. She had only wanted to protect her home, her privacy. Now, she was facing the very people who were supposed to help maintain the neighborhood's integrity. The next few days were a blur. Sarah spent hours gathering documents, talking to her lawyer, and preparing for what felt like an inevitable fight. Every time she looked out the window at the towering fence, a knot formed in her stomach. It wasn't just a fence anymore. It was a symbol of her rebellion against the system that had controlled her for so long. The neighbors avoided her, or at least, that's how it seemed. She had seen Carl across the street, but when he caught her eye, he quickly looked away. Janet hadn't been seen in days. Sarah could almost feel the weight of their judgment, but she didn't care anymore. They had pushed her into this position, and now she had to see it through. That evening, just as the sun began to set, there was another knock at her door. Sarah had been expecting it, but still, her heart skipped a beat. She opened the door to find Tom standing on her porch, his face hard, his arms crossed. What now, Tom? Sarah asked, trying to keep the edge out of her voice. Tom didn't waste time with pleasantries. I've come to give you one last chance, he said, his tone clipped. You take down that fence, and I'll make sure this all goes away. You'll be free of the fines, the legal mess, everything. All you have to do is comply. Sarah clenched her fists. I've already told you, Tom. The fence stays. Tom's eyes narrowed. You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about the fence anymore. You've made a mockery of the HOA. You've embarrassed me. And now you're going to pay for it. His words hit her like a slap. The tension in the air thickened, and Sarah felt a cold chill run through her. I'm not afraid of you, Sarah said, though she wasn't sure if she believed her own words. You can try to scare me all you want, but I'm not backing down. Tom stepped forward, his jaw tight. You'll regret this. The HOA has more power than you think. We'll make sure you lose everything, your money, your home, your reputation. And when we're done with you, no one will ever dare challenge the HOA again. Sarah's heart raced. She could feel her pulse pounding in her ears. I'm not afraid of you or your threats. The fence stays. You can take me to court, but I'm not giving up. Tom looked at her, his eyes hard and cold. For a moment, it seemed like he was about to say something else, but then he simply turned and walked away, his steps heavy with the weight of his threat. Sarah stood at the door, watching him leave. Her mind was spinning. He had just made it clear that this wasn't just about the fence anymore. This was personal. He was going to do everything in his power to destroy her for challenging the HOA. Her phone buzzed again. It was a message from her lawyer. The HOA has filed for an injunction. They're moving faster than expected. We need to prepare for court. This could get ugly. Sarah stared at the message, her heart sinking. Things were escalating faster than she could keep up with. The fight wasn't just about a fence anymore, it was about survival. As the evening grew darker, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that everything she had built, everything she had fought for, was at risk. The HOA wasn't just fighting to tear down her fence. They were fighting to break her. The next morning, Sarah found herself sitting in her car, staring at the towering fence. The neighborhood was eerily quiet, the streets empty. She felt like she was in the eye of the storm. The worst hadn't come yet. Just then, she saw Tom again. This time, he wasn't alone. He had 2 other HOA members with him, and they were walking up her driveway. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. They were coming for her. She couldn't run from this anymore. The battle had just begun. Chapter 5: The Reckoning. The morning air felt different. Sarah couldn't put her finger on it, but something had changed. The events of the past week had pushed her to the edge, and she knew things couldn't stay quiet for long. The HOA had made their move, and now it was time for her to fight back. But the question gnawed at her: how far would they go to tear down her fence? She walked out onto her porch, her eyes automatically drawn to the fence. It stood tall and imposing, a testament to her defiance. But even as she stood there, the weight of what was coming felt unbearable. The court hearing was just days away, and the legal battle had already begun to heat up. Sarah's lawyer had warned her that the HOA was playing dirty, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for what that might mean. As Sarah stepped off her porch and onto the driveway, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A man in a suit was standing at the end of her driveway, holding a clipboard. He didn't look familiar, but she knew immediately that he was from the HOA. Behind him, Tom stood, his arms crossed, a smug look on his face. 2 other HOA members were flanking him, their expressions just as cold. Sarah's stomach tightened. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this, to be confronted directly by the very people who had made her life hell over the past few weeks. But here they were, staring her down like soldiers ready for battle. "What's this?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady, but she could hear the tremble in it. She had already dealt with so much, and now, they were pushing even harder. The man in the suit stepped forward. "Mrs. Collins," he said, his voice sharp and formal, "we are here to officially notify you that the HOA is pursuing a permanent injunction to have your fence removed. This is not just a warning anymore. You've had your chances to comply, and now the HOA is taking legal action. I've already told you the fence stays," Sarah said, her voice firm, though she could feel her legs shaking beneath her. She wasn't going to let them win. Tom stepped forward, his face twisted in anger. "You don't get to make the rules here, Sarah. You've pushed us too far. This isn't just about a fence anymore. It's about your blatant disregard for the community and the HOA's authority. You will remove this fence, or you will suffer the consequences." Sarah didn't back down. "I've followed every rule you set. This is my property, and I'm not going to let you control me anymore." The lawyer beside Tom shook his head, flipping through his clipboard. "You really don't understand, do you? You're not just fighting a fence. You're fighting the HOA's power, and we won't let you win. The court will make you pay for this." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. She had known that they wouldn't back down easily, but hearing it from their lawyer made it feel all the more real. They weren't going to let this go, no matter how much she fought. Tom's expression grew even darker. "If you think you can just ignore the HOA's authority and get away with it, you're wrong. We've got the law on our side, and we'll use it to make sure you lose everything." Sarah felt a surge of panic rise in her chest, but she fought to keep it under control. She couldn't let them see her fear. Not now. Not when everything was on the line. "I'm not backing down," Sarah said, her voice unwavering. "You can threaten me all you want, but I'm not going to let you take my home from me." Tom's gaze burned into her, filled with venom. "You'll regret this," he hissed before turning away. The lawyer followed suit, handing Sarah a final document before walking off. "We'll see you in court, Mrs. Collins. The battle has only just begun." As they left, Sarah stood frozen on her porch, the weight of their words pressing down on her. This wasn't over. The battle was just beginning, and now she had to prepare for the next phase of the war. The next few days blurred together as Sarah focused all her energy on preparing for the court hearing. She went over every document, every piece of evidence, making sure her lawyer had everything they needed. The HOA was ruthless, and she couldn't afford to be anything less than prepared. As the hearing drew nearer, she received another email from her lawyer, this time with the subject line: "Urgent, HOA's new move." Her heart sank as she clicked on it. Dear Mrs. Collins, the HOA has filed for an expedited injunction hearing. They're pushing hard to have your fence removed before the scheduled court date. The hearing will take place tomorrow. We need to be ready for anything they throw at us. Please make sure you're available for a final consultation tonight. Best regards, David Morris, Attorney at Law. Sarah stared at the screen, feeling a mixture of dread and anger. The HOA wasn't just trying to remove her fence, they were trying to destroy her. But she couldn't let them. Not after everything she had been through. She had come too far to back down now. That evening, she met with her lawyer to go over the final details. He looked as serious as she had ever seen him. This is going to be tough, David said, leaning forward across the table. The HOA is pulling out all the stops. They've got their lawyer, and they're not going to let you win without a fight. You need to be prepared for what's coming. Sarah nodded, her mind racing. I'm ready. I won't let them take my home. David paused, his eyes studying her. You know, Sarah, this isn't just about the fence anymore. This is about everything you've built. They're trying to break you. And they'll do whatever it takes to win. Sarah clenched her fists. Then I'll do whatever it takes to stop them. The day of the hearing arrived, and Sarah walked into the courthouse with a heavy heart. The air was thick with tension as she and her lawyer made their way to the courtroom. She could hear Tom's voice, faint but unmistakable, on the other side of the door. The hearing was about to begin. But just as Sarah was about to take her seat, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Tom wasn't alone. Standing beside him was someone she hadn't expected to see, Janet Simmons. What was she doing here? If you liked my video, then make sure to like and subscribe my channel.